Okay. Oh, hi, and welcome to SABnessful, where I give my opinions that no one really cares about, but will give anyways. Today, we're diving into the 2025 film, The Gorge, which I keep wanting to call The George. I wonder what that would look like. I don't really have much to add before the overview, so let's not waste any time. Although, what's not wasting time is caressing that subscribe button to help my channel grow. And also liking and commenting, take all the time you need for that. I really don't mind, it would be nice to see. I would love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts, but that's okay if you don't have to. But you know, it doesn't take a long time. Enough said, let's skydive into The Gorge. Spoilers abound. The film begins with one of our two protagonists, Drasa, sniping some random bald dude's head. We then see our other protagonist, Levi, waking up from a nightmare. He then drives to some beach and stays there till morning writing poems in his notebook. As one does. He then gets a text to report to somebody, and we see him go to a Marine Corps base, where he meets with, Bartholomew. And here we get lots of exposition.
4 years retired, yet 2 salutes?
Shows respect.
As an elite sniper, you have 113 confirmed kills and an additional 81 probable kills.
She asks if he still does jobs for the Marines, and he says anytime they call him. She asks why he isn't currently working under a private contract, and he says he was recently deemed unfit for service by a corporate shrink. She asks if he currently has a girlfriend. Wait, what? That's so random.
Anyone special? Someone who couldn't live without you.
No.
Damn, just really twisting that knife there. Anyway, she asks more questions, and we learn that he has PTSD and has horrible nightmares, and that he didn't contest the psych evaluation because he had no reason to. Essentially, he doesn't really have any motivation to be doing anything. But luckily for him, he has a guardian angel in Bartholomew, and she asks what if she gave him a reason. We then go to Lithuania and see Drasa talking with her dad at her mother's grave to get more exposition. And we learn that her dad has terminal cancer. She tells him she's being sent on a job that'll last a year, and she's worried he'll pass and won't even know it. He tells her that she will know, and he plans on taking his own life on Valentine's Day, wanting to go out on his terms. We then get a September title card and see a sedated Levi waking up in an aircraft, and he's forced to hand over all his personal belongings, which I don't know why they didn't do that before he was sedated.
You're expected by 1600 hours tomorrow. Open it on the ground.
Where are we?
I'm not authorized to answer that.
He then jumps from the aircraft and travels to his destination. He finally arrives and meets JD, who's been there a year and is the person Levi is replacing. JD then shows him the ropes, but to keep things simple, I'll just read off what he says. Warning, prepare for a massive info dump. JD tells Levi he'll be living alone and living in the West Tower, which is completely self-sufficient. There's also an East Tower across the gorge who just did their annual rotation. Any contact with East Tower is forbidden, and that each tower must keep to themselves. And that there's no way across as there's, well, a gorge, and the south and north ends are covered in landmines and lethal tactical barriers, aka auto turrets. Levi will have daily tasks, which I'm not going to go over all of them, 2 of them being a radio check every 30 days and maintenance on the cloakers. Cloakers, you ask? They're satellite transmitters surrounding the area which camouflages the gorge from other satellites, meaning no one can see it. This also explains, I'm assuming, why there are no security cameras, because if there were, this would be a very short movie. Because of the transmitters, there's no outside communication, and in an emergency, Levi can press the emergency button on the radio that will let them know.
Let's who know?
The powers that be, mate. Whoever.
Nice, helpful information. Also, if the gorge is overrun or all the cloakers fail at once, the air sirens will go off and stray dog protocol will automatically commence.
Stray dog protocol. What is that?
No idea.
Nice, nice. Once again, very helpful. Oh, and would you look at that? It's backstory time.
This place is old. I'm talking end of the Second World War, early Cold War shit, and it's secret. Way back then, an agreement was made and a coalition formed to keep it a secret. So now, every year, a new representative from one of the Western nations patrols the Western Rim, and someone on the other side patrols the Eastern Rim. They're your counterpart.
Wow. Is it just me or do things just get darker? Am I crazy? No. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, so my backlight battery totally died because I forgot to charge it. You can see the difference from the beginning here. Dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. Anyways, I had to stop recording for 3 hours, which the battery wasn't fully charged, but I needed to film through my likes section to stay on schedule. So place your bets if I'll be able to finish before it dies again. Anyways, back to the video. JD then goes on to say that all this information has been passed down from the previous occupants. I don't know why there couldn't have been a manual, but whatever. Now, hopefully you still have room for one more piece of information, the most important piece. What is the mission? Levi's mission is to stop what they call the Hollow Men from coming out of the east and west side of the gorge. Ooh. Now the backstory.
What I can tell you is in the late 1940s, they sent 3 entire battalions, 2,400 men on horseback into the gorge to clean it out. Not a single man returned. After that, they shifted to a purely containment strategy.
What do you think's really going on here?
Well, the theory I think summarizes the situation most succinctly is the gorge is the door to hell, and we're standing guard at the gate.
Very ominous. What do these Hollow-Men look like? You're going to tell us, right, JD? 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 He's not. And that concludes the info dump. Should be smooth sailing from here. The next day, JD gets picked up by an aircraft and is immediately killed, with his body dropped into the woods. Now it's October, and we see Levi doing his tasks. At one point, he finds behind a shelf a wall full of quotes from the previous occupants, including some Shaw guy, the first occupant. He then does more tasks and decides to take a peek at East Tower, where he sees Drossa cutting some wood. I bet he wishes she was working on some other kind of wood. November. It's Drossa's birthday, and she doesn't want to celebrate alone, so she gets Levi's attention and writes to him. At first, he tries to follow the rules, but quickly does away with that, and the two start chatting, showing off their sniping skills, and just having a good time. So fun, in fact, that the Hollow-Men gets mad FOMO and decide to show up to the party. At last, we finally get to see what they look like, and wow, do they look like they come from hell. Both Levi and Drossa are able to keep them from escaping the gorge. The next day, Levi goes out to replace the landmines that were set off the night before, and while doing so, a small rockets-looking thing comes out from the gorge. Okay, that was weird, but probably not important. December. Levi and Drossa continue breaking the rules and start bonding. They even made snow people out of each other. Anyways, now it's February, specifically Valentine's Day, and Drossa lights a candle for her father, knowing that he's no longer alive. Levi asks her what's wrong, and she says she wishes he was with her. Levi says bet, and the next day he creates a zipline connecting him to the other side of the gorge, and he and Drossa finally meet face to face. They basically then go on a date and open up, telling each other how they cope with what they do. Later that night, they dance and then do it, and afterwards, while talking, Levi shares he writes poems to pass the time, and Drossa asks if he's written a poem about her.
I have, but I just started it.
Then tell me the title.
She collapsed the night.
The next morning, Levi heads back to his tower, and for some reason, the two professional snipers didn't check the walls and see Hollow-Men were climbing them. One of them sets off a landmine which breaks the zipline, causing Levi to fall into the gorge, and prompting Drossa to follow him. Levi lands in a tree and oh, what the fuck? Well, Levi shoots it, which lets Drossa know where he is. Levi falls out to the tree and lands on a mouth?
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
Fortunately, Drossa saves him just in time. They walk around and are quickly attacked by Hollow-Men riding horses? Interesting. They're able to kill 2 out of 3 of them, and after the fight, Drossa realizes the auto sender she brought was lost in the river she landed in. Because of this, they can't use the cable to get back up and decide to follow the river down south. Levi then takes a closer look at the Hollow-Men.
Old military, 1st Airborne American.
I saw British SAS and a Soviet Spetsnaz back there. Post-war.
All these uniforms are from the 1940s. Cavalry on horseback. They're the lost battalions.
They should be long dead, Levi.
Oh, the plot thickens. They follow the river and see some very creepy trees. Then they come across a town? Interesting.
This damage looks seismic.
Earthquake, maybe.
They hear shrieking and take shelter in a church that has bodies of people who took their own lives using cyanide. They get attacked, they escape, and find a door conveniently unlocked for them and find themselves in a type of structure conveniently devoid of monsters. They investigate and find a lab full of corpses and a roll of film. Drossa finds a backup generator and turns on the power, and they play the film where all is revealed.
1946. Our community here was formed as part of a top-secret coalition of nations from both East and West. During the last years of World War II, while Robert Oppenheimer and his Los Alamos community developed the atom bomb, we were developing similarly destructive biochemical missiles.
The scientist goes on to mention that after the earthquake, their mission went from research to containment, and to make sure nothing left the gorge.
Exposure to the biochemical contaminant has literally merged the genetic DNA of the biological entities in our gorge environment. Human DNA has merged with plants, animals, and even insects. Some people are more resistant to contamination than others, especially if exposure is limited to hours instead of days.
She goes on to mention that if infected, symptoms will show up within 5 days. And the chemical spreads through the mist, which isn't mentioned here, but it's important to know. After the film, they find a computer from the late 2000s and Levi powers it on. Drossa asks Levi why haven't they just bombed the place, and Levi realizes that they're still studying the biochemical weapon, and that they're not working for the military but some organization called Dark Lake.
Dark Lake is a huge corporation specializing in genetic research. Their drones are collecting hybrid DNA samples. They're building super soldiers.
I feel like it's going to die at any moment. Levi then clicks on a file titled Stray Dog, and it shows him a missile hanging from its structure and papers conveniently labeled Gorge Self-Destruction Protocol. They then start to exit the lab, but Levi has something he wants to tell Drossa.
If something happens and we don't make it out of here. And this is the way the world ends for us anyway. To me, it was worth it. Because I got to know you.
Ugh, romance. They go to the door and Drassa discovers that the ammo bag she left has been taken. Jesus, Drassa losing everything. This clues them that the Hollow Men are more intelligent than they realize. They throw smoke grenades and Drassa finds her bag. But it's a trap. Kinda surprised a skilled sniper wouldn't realize that's a trap. Anyways, Drassa is captured and Levi follows them to a missile silo. Drassa breaks free and with the help from Levi, they kill the Hollow Man, who is revealed to be Shaw, the first occupants in West Tower. They make their way out of the silo and find a garage full of Jeeps.
I know how we're getting out of here. These old Jeeps have powerful winches. It'll work just like an auto ascender.
I'm not sure about that, but sure, we'll go with it. They take the Jeep and head towards the cable, and they are followed by Hollow Men. Levi hooks the cable to the Jeep and they start driving up the wall? How is this possible? They eventually get back up and bandage their wounds. They talk about having to quarantine, and Drassa tells Levi that she knows a place in France they could run to if they're not infected. We then see them create a new zipline so that Levi can return to the tower since they both have radio checks the next day. During Levi's radio check, Bartholomew tells them that one of their research drones was activated, and asks if he went into the gorge, to which he says negative.
Have you noticed any movement from your eastern counterpart?
Negative.
As if it wasn't you that activated our computer system in the gorge. I have to assume that it was your eastern counterpart. There are, after all, only the two of you there. You are to neutralize your counterpart immediately.
We then see Bartholomew looking at her screen, showing us that Levi and Drassa were caught on the computer's camera.
Commander, Levi Kane is compromised. Gather your team, we'll leave in the morning.
You're coming with us, ma'am?
He's my mistake. I'll kill him myself if I have to.
Wait a second, I thought they couldn't be filmed because of the cloakers. Whatever. The next day, we see Levi and Drassa connecting wires to the cloakers, and see a Dark Lake helicopter approaching. They immediately run, and once they're far away, they each shoot one of the cloakers, which just explodes. And with the connecting wiring, this causes all the other cloakers to explode, and causes Protocol Stray Dog to go into effect. The missile goes off, destroying everything in the gorge and killing Bartholomew. While Drassa is able to get away, Levi falls down a cliff while trying to run from the explosion. We then see Drassa quarantined for 5 days with no symptoms. We then go to and see Drassa waiting for Levi, who doesn't show up. She then reads the poem that Levi gave to her, which is the poem Levi told her about. She collapsed the night. Now it's April. And while working as a waitress, Drassa spots Levi at a table.
You're late.
Sorry, I got injured at my old job.
Well, if you're looking for a new one, the kitchen's hiring.
I had to get back to you.
And then they kiss. Remember, Drassa, you're on the job. The film then ends with the two of them making out. Now onto my likes. There's actually quite a lot I like about this movie. First, I really like the setting and the concept of two snipers guarding the gorge, and that they can't communicate with each other and don't really know what's going on. I also liked how the mystery of the gorge unfolds throughout the story, and I think it's the film's strongest component. We're given little pieces here and there, and nothing is ever directly told to us. Well, except for when we get to the film with the scientist, which I'll get into that during my dislikes. I also really like the Hollow Men. They were very creepy and truly looked like they came from hell. And the set design was done extremely well. The creepy trees, the weird goopy thing they ran into while escaping the silo, the fucking ground mouth, absolute nightmare fuel. And while watching the movie, I couldn't help but think that this would make an amazing video game. I could totally see the game being of you in the tower trying to keep the Hollow Men at bay, and you go through various stages of difficulty as each month passes. And at some point you go into the gorge and explore it and get information, similar to how you would while exploring the Fallout games. I think it just died on me. Well, I'm almost done with this section, so I'm gonna finish it. Deal with the lighting. Moving on to the characters, I think they were all well written. I wasn't really a fan of the romance storyline, but I don't think it was poorly done. I also liked that the story just followed two characters, which meant more time could be spent developing the mystery of the gorge. In terms of my favorite character, there's only 3 options, and they kind of all have very similar personalities. I guess I'll say Levi, since he's the most fleshed out between the 3 of them. And that's a wrap for the day. I'll film the rest tomorrow when my light battery is fully charged.
The next day.
And we are back. The light behind me is now fully charged, so hopefully there will be no more technical issues for the rest of the duration of this video. Moving on to my dislikes, as already mentioned, I didn't really like the film of the scientist explaining everything. Now, usually I do get frustrated when big mysteries are not fully explained, but I didn't think the film was necessary. The movie did a great job of giving the audience a lot of information through the set and from the characters investigating. For instance, when they got to the lab, I realized, oh, okay, this is an experiment gone wrong. And then of course, we got to the film explaining that. But I think it would have been better if the film didn't exist and they let the audience try to figure out what happened themselves, which would then create more buzz does around the movie as they try to figure out what its mysteries are. Show not tell, you know? I also wasn't a fan of the ending. The last 30 minutes just felt super rushed and felt anticlimactic to me. We have these really cool holomen, but the climax doesn't include them and instead includes drones. An odd creative choice. And I also didn't like the happy ending. I just felt it didn't match the tone of the rest of the movie, which was dark and full of dread and unsettling. Oh, and I didn't like the computer being in the gorge. Why on earth would you do research down there after the biochemical weapon was released? I'm sure by the late 2000s they already knew everything the scientists mentioned, which means having scientists down there would be the dumbest move. Now, I can see them building the self-destruction protocol, but that still doesn't explain why you do research down there. Maybe Dark Lake didn't tell the researchers what was going on and put them down there to see what would happen, using them as human test subjects, but that still seems like a stretch. My point is that the computer down there feels more like a plot device and not something Dark Lake would naturally do. At least the film rule makes sense. Of course, the scientists would want to document their findings, but the computer, nah. In terms of my least favorite character, I really don't have one. My biggest overall complaint though is in the form of a question that applies to multiple parts of the film. That question being, what's the point? What's the point of the snipers being there? The north and south ends don't have them, so why not just have the automatic weapons and landmines at the east and west side as well? I guess you could say that by having someone there they could communicate if any holomen got out, but why not have cameras? They clearly can, or motion sensors that would alert them if any holomen got out, which I think they already have through the Stray Dog protocol. And what's the point in a yearly rotation? Why not 2 or 3 years so you don't have to kill as many soldiers? What was the point of Holoman Shaw kidnapping Drasa? What was he planning on doing with her? Why not just kill her? Thus, this brings me to my How I Changed section. Oh my god. I fucking love Mint Medley. With my changes, I really want to lean into the mystery aspect of the story since that's its strongest part. So I'll be completely scrapping the film they watch in favor of leaving things more ambiguous, and letting the audience come to their own conclusion about what happened. That said, scrapping the film does mean we lose a lot of information, so I'll be reincorporating some of that info in other ways. You'll see. I'm also completely scrapping the ending. So from the scene of Bartholomew asking Levi if he went to the gorge onward is no more. I'll be completely changing the ending. I also want to address some of my dislikes. Specifically, I want to give reasons for specific things, like why have snipers in the first place and why a yearly rotation. To do this, I'll be tweaking various scenes throughout the movie, but any scenes I don't mention are staying the same. Enough said, this is how I changed the gorge. We're going to start with Levi meeting JD, and I want to add JD being very itchy, like all over the place itchy. Levi asked JD about it, and he says it started a few days ago, but it's probably not a big deal. It will be. JD tells Levi about his task, and when he goes over the radio checks, he tells Levi that during it he must give a full health report and describe how he's feeling, and must do this every week, not every month. He also says that Protocol Stray Dog will go into effect if the gorge is overrun, but he doesn't say and if all the cloakers fail, because that's just not a thing anymore. Fast forward to JD getting picked up and killed. I'm actually cutting this scene, but we will see JD again. Does this mean JD gets to live?
No.
Fast forward to Levi finding the wall of quotes. Next to the quotes are the years that each occupant was there, but I'm going to slightly change this. Instead of just having the year they were there, each occupant will write the specific dates. It'll start with Shaw, and it could say something like March 1st, 1947 through June 1st, 1947. And the first several names will say they were there for 3 months, and then the next will say 4 months, and then 5 months, and keep going till we get to JD, which has September 1st, 2024 to September 1st, 2025. This might seem random, but I have an idea that you'll see later. Fast forward to Levi and Drasa in the gorge and surrounded by the creepy trees. Instead of them walking in the center of the gorge, I'll have them walk against the right side of it. That way they only have to worry about enemies coming from their left. I feel like as people from the military, they would naturally do this. Although now I guess they could get pinned against the wall and have no escape. Whatever. Now, while walking along the wall, I'll have them find JD's body, which is covered in creepy plant stuff, but noticeably has a bullet hole through his head. This, of course, puzzles Levi because he knows JD wasn't carrying a gun, and the auto weapons wouldn't have shot him since he was above the gorge. They then continue on their way and see a wall in the distance and go towards it, entering the town. Everything plays out the same till we get to the lab and Levi and Drasa watch the film. Now, as mentioned, I cut the film, but I still want to convey the information in it, but in a more subtle way. The first piece of information we get is that there was a secret coalition during World War II. To show this, I'd have flags of those nations either hanging up on the walls or the ceiling, and this would include a Soviet Union flag, not a Russia one. I'd also throw in a map highlighting different battles during World War II, and one of the protagonists could even comment on that. The next piece of information is that an earthquake compromised the facility. Now that's easy to show since Levi already commented on there being an earthquake, and I showed the facility in a worse state of disarray, with a section of the ceiling being collapsed, broken beakers, and the ground cracked. Next piece of information is the biochemical weapon merging human DNA with plants and insects, but that's already given through the holoman and set design, so I don't really need to show that here. The other pieces of information are the symptoms of the biochemical weapon and exposure to it. This will be shown through files that Levi and Jossa find, and they'll read this information out loud. I'd also have the files dated so that astute viewers will see the date 1946 and know exactly when this took place. Now, the files will work similarly to the film's function. It will be kind of telly, but now a lot less information is told to us. Just the symptoms and exposure period of the biochemical weapon. We're not directly told what happened and what exactly the mist is. That's all shown to us through set design and the things I've added. Also, I am going to change how the biochemical weapon works. I hate saying biochemical weapon. It's so difficult to say constantly. They read through the files titled containment and learn that upon being exposed and infected, a person only has 2 weeks before they are completely taken over. The first week, a person will experience itching all over their body and have tiny black spots popping on their skin. During the second week, the black spots get bigger and more. The person's body gradually changes to what the holomen look like. And after the second week, their mind is completely taken over. They also learn that after 2 weeks and once fully infected, the holomen are able to spread the biochemical weapon themselves, and that the merging of DNA can happen whether or not the host is alive, but is less efficient when they are dead. Now, is that how infections from biochemical whatevers actually work in the human body?
Probably not.
But in a world where you can drive up walls, anything is possible. In terms of exposure, they learned that direct exposure to the biochemical weapon, aka the mist, can lead to infection, but if only directly exposed for a few hours, then maybe not. They also learned that the mist potency dissipates over time, aka lesser of a chance of getting infected from the mist, and that indirect exposure is possible, as in being near the mist for a long period of time can lead to infection. For example, if you happen to be staying just a couple hundred feet away from the mist, after a long period of time, you will be infected, because you know air travels and breathing and blah 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 blah. This is why I've made so many changes. I really like the idea of an aspect of the story never being directly told to the audience. That aspect being, why are the snipers there and why are they frequently rotated? But all the evidence is there to piece it together. That answer being that the snipers are test subjects and researchers are seeing how long they can last being near the mist before they are completely infected. It starts with only being 3 months, but as the biochemical mist, honestly I have no idea if I've been labeling that right, as it dissipates over time, the occupants are able to make it to 4 months, then 5, and now it's a year. So this helps the researchers get a good sense of how much the mist has dissipated. This then explains why they rotate the snipers so much. It's because they get infected, which is why every week they must do a radio check and do a health report. Once the occupant tells them that they're itchy all over and see black spots, this lets the researchers know they need to find a replacement. So they do, and they kill the occupants well before their 2 weeks is up so that they don't become contagious, and throw their body into the gorge to keep the plant things from spreading. Hopefully I've added enough evidence to where that is clear, but even if it's not, that aspect isn't really that important to the main storyline. It's just a fun way to add more lore to what's going on. Now back to the story. After investigating the lab, Levi and Jossa head back into the town, and I am cutting them finding the computer. That just doesn't exist now. I'm also cutting Jossa getting kidnapped because that was random. As they make their way through the town, another one of those rocket-looking things collects samples and takes off, cluing them in that research is still being conducted. They exit the town and come across the hanging missile, which they investigate and see on the side of the missile the word stray dog, cluing them in that this is the emergency protocol if the gorge is overrun. They keep heading south and hear shrieking in the distance, so they run into a missile silo to hide out. And while there, they fight a couple holomen. After successfully killing them, Levi looks at one of their jackets and realizes the holoman is Shaw. They then head out of the silo and find a jeep, and their escape plays out the same. Fast forward to them bandaging their wounds. They now have to quarantine and know if they have no symptoms after 2 weeks, they should be fine. Well, they're not fine because after a week, they have itchiness and black spots all over their body. They communicate this to each other and they lie about it during their next radio check, knowing that they'll likely be killed if they told the truth. Levi then heads to East Tower and the two of them acknowledge that they are going to die. So they might as well put a stop to what's in the gorge and they head back down. And we're now headed into the climax of the film, which I think the climax being the gorge is much more fitting. Also, I'm just going to whip through the new climax because it's mostly just fighting. I'm just going to go over the main points. They head back down via parachute and they make their way towards the hanging missile. A bunch of holomen come, they fight them, and eventually I'll have Levi go off to try to drop the missile while Jossa holds off the holomen. Levi succeeds and Levi and Jossa make eye contact with each other in slow motion right before the missile goes off, killing both of them and destroying everything inside the gorge, ending the film. Because of my new ending, this is why I cut the line from JD saying stray dog will go into effect if the cloakers fail. I wanted to give Levi and Jossa another reason to go back into the gorge. Yes, the missile will go off if the gorge is overrun, but that's just too risky and there's a good chance a holoman could escape, which is why they must go down to the gorge to do it themselves. And them both dying I think fits better with the constant feeling of dread that is present throughout the movie. There is no way they're going going to live, so they have to make the best of it. It's a much darker ending to a very dark film, so I think it works. And that's how I changed the gorge. Let me know what you think of my changes down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. You can let me know if my new changes make sense, or if I'm probably conveying everything, or if I just made things very confusing. That's all. Goodbye.